How's it going, everyone? Blueknight here, and welcome back to the channel. So the launch of Spongebob Rehydrated is fast approaching, and with that, we kinda have to wonder what's next for THQ Nordic regarding future remakes of Nickelodeon games. Well, that'll likely be determined by how well Spongebob Rehydrated performs in both sales and reception, in which case I think it'll do pretty well to warrant a sequel. But what exactly will be remade after Spongebob Rehydrated? Obviously, games based on franchises that have garnered a rather large fanbase and would therefore be building around nostalgia, like Danny Phantom, The Fairy Oddparents, Jimmy Neutron, Tak, which was a video game series before becoming a TV show 4 years later, and My Life as a Teenage Robot. Yeah, I actually did not know just how popular the show was until I got back into it recently. Oh, that was a nostalgia trip. But all the shows that I just named are featured in the official list put out by THQ Nordic when they first announced their partnership with Nickelodeon back in 2018 to remake lots of classic games in Nick's library. Which is why we're getting Spongebob Rehydrated. But there's an issue. A lot of these shows either finished their initial runs, like Danny Phantom, or were outright cancelled due to ratings, like My Life as a Teenage Robot, which was oddly moved to Nicktoons for its third season where it got the worst ratings, likely due to not as many people having Nicktoons compared to Nickelodeon. And honestly, I feel like that this would be foreshadowing what would later happen to Sonic Boom on Cartoon Network, where Season 1 got pretty good ratings, but then decided to boot the show over to Boomerang for its second season, where ratings got worse, and now it's pretty much cancelled. And I'm still not very happy about how these networks handled both of these shows, but that might be for another time. Back to the point, if these games were remade, then what would they have to help promote it? There's no new episodes being aired, no movies, no nothing, with the exceptions of the recent releases of the new Invader Zim and Rocko's Modern Life films over on Netflix, which these two series are on the list of remakes that THQ Nordic will be doing. But besides that, some of the listed series had games based around TV specials, like Jimmy Neutron, Attack of Twonkies, and Danny Phantom, The Ultimate Enemy, since these type of games do tend to expand on the respective specials stories, so it might work. While Tak, on the other hand, can easily get away with a remake because the original 3 games were not connected to anything else whatsoever. Heck, even some of the shows listed here, more specifically My Life as a Teenage Robot, Invader Zim, and Cat Scratch, neither of which got a dedicated video game all to themselves, yet they appear on this list for some reason. Instead, these shows only appeared in the crossover game series Nicktoons Unite. Technically speaking, the later games like Attack of the Toybots, Android Invasion, and Globs of Doom. Invader Zim had a presence in all 3 of those games, while XJ9 was limited to just Toybots, as a mere unlockable character that doesn't have much to do with the story whatsoever. Yeah, that's just great. The last actual Nicktoons game to include her happens to be in the same year the show aired its final episode, and you guys don't even bother to give her any focus outside just being here. Not to mention, you guys completely excluded her from the following game, Globs of Doom, which released the following year. Nice move, guys. But just with those 3 shows listed tells me that one of the proposed remakes that is in the works or is planned is the Nicktoons Unite series. Now let's just put on the brakes here for a second. The Nicktoons games are possibly being remade. That's right, these games. Oh boy, these games. The very games that overall received mixed reception and weren't as successful compared to the individual Nick games like SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom. How or why that happened I would assume have to do with a multiple amount of reasons, like very repetitious gameplay, having a primary focus on multiplayer, too dang many loading screens, only a year's worth of development time in between releases by the same developers, except Globs of Doom, which was developed by Incinerator Studios and not Bluetongue. On top of that, there was a heavy reliance on 2D segments, which was especially true in Attack of the Toybots, which was already a sign of the game being rushed, on top of throwing other characters into the mix that have almost no involvement in the game's story whatsoever. And it might be an unpopular opinion on my part, but the stories that each game presents are actually not bad. I mean, they're original, it's just that the gameplay doesn't really make up for it. Unlike Battle for Bikini Bottom, where everything complements each other perfectly. But I will say that in Attack of the Toybots, there were a few shining moments that the developers over at Bluetongue did with the series, and they were special, really fun missions given to both Danny Phantom in a new form that nobody seems to question, and SpongeBob's tongue sliding sections, with these being a direct callback to the mechanic that was first introduced in the original Battle for Bikini Bottom, and would go on to be used in Globs of Doom, which I still haven't played. It does feel rather odd after coming from the Heavy Iron SpongeBob games, but after a bit of getting used to and playing almost nothing but 2D segments for a while, it feels pretty good. These two special missions certainly felt like a step in the right direction for the series, as this is what it desperately needed, to allow some use of the characters' many abilities that they are capable of. Something that can sure as heck be managed a whole lot easier in a single player setting than a multiplayer setting. It's also something that the Ratchet & Clank franchise went through with All for One, with its focus on multiplayer rather than the traditional, more expanded single-player experience of the other games. Now, I can't actually give my opinion on it because I ain't played it yet, but I will say that reception to this game was mixed, just like Nicktoons. Now, am I worried about the Nicktoons Unite series of games being remade? Yes. Should they get the Spongebob Rehydrated treatment? Absolutely not. Instead, I think that the series should be reimagined from the ground up. Basically what this means is that a lot of elements like the story, levels, mechanics, and much more are all changed or added. If you've played Ratchet & Clank PS4 and or the Final Fantasy VII Remake, well, technically it's a reimagining, then you'll have a general idea of what I mean by the term reimagining. Now, if I were the developers working on the project, here are 7 things that I would do to reimagine the first Nicktoons game to make it one great game. First of all, remove the focus on multiplayer, isolate it to its own mode, and focus on and expand the single player mode, sort of like what Rehydrated is doing with its new Horde mode. Secondly, since this would likely be a reimagining, I would overhaul the gameplay to match this new single-player style in the vein of SpongeBob Rehydrated. For example, have each world as a chapter, a hub world if you prefer. For example, we'll use Bikini Bottom from Battle for Bikini Bottom, because why not? And have these individual sections within these chapters that only certain characters can enter to accomplish the needed goal of that section with their own respective gameplay styles. Once you complete all of them, you can then work your way to the villain of the respective world, where you could possibly switch between characters as needed for specific parts of each battle, while still retaining each character's respective gameplay styles. How the characters would play throughout the various parts of the game would be in a 3D setting with no overhead camera, would feature semi-open Rehydrated-esque areas to encourage exploration and making full use of each character's abilities. Like say SpongeBob can have all of his abilities from Rehydrated, but with some new additions, perhaps ones from the original Nicktoons Unite, but retooled to work much better, like the Bubble Bomb or Doodle Bob for instance. Danny Phantom has so many abilities that could be incorporated, including ectoplasmic beams, being able to use abilities relating to fire and ice, invisibility, overshadowing, flight, even the ghostly whale and being able to pass through walls to discover secret areas. Just imagine all the possibilities involving Danny's many abilities. Now, while quite a few of these already existed in the original Nicktoons Unite, I think that they could be properly utilized in this style, but these are just my ideas. Thirdly, I'd add an extra world or two to represent another classic Nicktoons series, like say My Life as a Teenage Robot, seeing as the series does appear in Nicktoons Attack of the Toybots and is technically considered a Nicktoon. It'd honestly be great to explore XJ9's world in full 3D for the first time in a video game, something that the series never got before. And doing so would also make Jenny the only main female playable character. And of course, the villain of her world would be Vexus, because she's like the show's main villain as she pops up way more than the other villains, therefore making her the only female villain in the game. What exactly they would need from Jenny's world would, I guess, be a resource that can only be found in her world that's vital to the Syndicate's ultimate plan, just as with all the other worlds in the game. And tying into my earlier examples regarding overhauling the gameplay for the single-player experience, XJ9 would fit perfectly given all the abilities that she's capable of. Flight, transforming, weapons, infrared vision to detect hidden objects and enemies. Now trying to cram every ability that she can do into the game would almost be impossible, same for Danny Phantom. But whatever can be fit in would make XJ9 an excellent addition to the game. The fourth point would be story adjustments. Now there's not exactly a whole lot I would really change concerning the original story of Nicktoons Unite. with the exception of the additional world and characters, of course. But what I would change is the use of these dang text boxes that sometimes do and sometimes don't have voice acting that you could not skip, which were honestly kind of annoying. Instead, I'd use actual properly animated cutscenes when needed, and believe me, they are needed. But when interacting with in-level characters, just do something similar to what Spongebob Rehydrated is doing in terms of character interaction. It's a very simple solution. Fifth thing I would change is the music, which is kind of an obvious thing you would do for reimagining, but seeing as the original's music was, in my opinion, the weakest in the series, and it oftentimes felt like the same tracks were being reused in multiple levels. That might have been able to fly past quality assurance back then, but I'm sure that wouldn't fly today. Change number 6 would be a completely revamped upgrade system, where new abilities can be unlocked and upgraded with the game's respective currency that can be found in every world, functioning like the shiny objects in Spongebob Rehydrated, but the system itself operating more similarly to the upgrade system from the SpongeBob movie game. And finally, I'd make the final boss way more interesting than what we got in the original, which was a giant ball, where you have to run around, figure out where the floor pieces go, and disable their respective villain shields. It's not that great, and it doesn't feel that rewarding. So what I'd do is make the final boss a giant transforming robot, because why not, with each villain controlling each of its abilities, where only a specific character can affect it during the respective phases. Not to mention, it would truly be a test of the player's skills, and actually feel like that the stakes have been significantly raised. But yeah, that's how I would reimagine the first Nicktoons game if I was working on it. And who knows, if it happens, and we do get a proper crossover game out of it, it could very well lead to a revival or two involving everyone's favorite teenage robot and spectral superhero. And seeing as Invader Zim and Rocko's Modern Life came back as Netflix films after all these years, you never know what Nick plans to do next that could tie into the next remake. Now, to THQ Nordic, or to anyone working on such a project as a Nicktoons remake, if you're watching this, then please, take my ideas for a reimagining of the first Nicktoons game into consideration, as these characters definitely deserve a proper crossover video game, and not a retread of the past few very repetitive attempts. Just take a look at how each show's standalone games, like SpongeBob Rehydrated, play, and try to incorporate and adapt them into a crossover setting with multiple playstyles that feel really good to play. That is all I ask. And that's going to pretty much be about it for today's video, everyone. This video turned out to be much longer than I initially planned on it being, but I did have a lot that I needed to say regarding the possibility of Nicktoons Unite possibly being remade. So if you watched the whole thing, I really do appreciate it, but in the comments section below, please let me know if you would want to see Nicktoons Unite get a proper remake via a reimagining. What ideas or series would you incorporate? What would you want to see? And if any of you guys can, then please share this video around. If you want, tweet it at THQ Nordic and or Nickelodeon over on Twitter, or do it on the platform of your choice. Let's just spread this around as much as we can, because I'm sure that there are a lot of you out there that wants these shows to have a proper video game crossover and not a complete one-to-one remake of the very rough original. And I happen to be one of them fans, and it's exactly why I made this video. Anyways guys, if you want to stay up to date with any more Nick game remakes and SpongeBob Rehydrated, then be sure to stay tuned to the channel, and I will cover them as we get updates. With SpongeBob Rehydrated, yes, we got new gameplay and footage and stuff like that I'm yet to talk about, but I'm going to try to get that out by the end of the week. So yeah, once again, thank you all so much for watching and supporting the channel. I've been Blueknight, and I'll see you guys back here next time. Goodbye!